Hello everyone, you are on the channel The Middle Ages, and today we're diving into one of the most dramatic, complex, and misunderstood periods in history, the Age of the Crusades. Forget the simple, black and white stories you might have heard. This was an era of intense faith, clashing empires, political ambition, and profound cultural exchange that reshaped the world. So, grab a seat as we journey back 1,000 years to uncover the real story behind these holy wars. It all begins in the late 11th century. The Byzantine Empire, the eastern remnant of the old Roman Empire, was in trouble. They were facing increasing pressure from the Seljuk Turks, a powerful force that had conquered vast territories in the Middle East, including the holy city of Jerusalem. The Byzantine Emperor, Alexios Komnenos, needed help. He sent a desperate appeal to the most powerful figure in Western Europe, Pope Urban II. Now, Pope Urban II was a shrewd political operator. He saw an opportunity not just to help a fellow Christian empire, but to achieve several goals at once. He could assert papal authority over the knights and nobles of Europe, who were often busy fighting each other. He could direct their violent energies outward, towards a common enemy. And most importantly, he could reclaim the Holy Land for Christendom. So in 1095, at the Council of Clermont in France, Pope Urban II delivered one of the most influential speeches in history. He painted a vivid picture of Christian pilgrims suffering and holy sites being desecrated. He called upon the knights of Europe to stop their petty wars and take up the cross, to march east and liberate Jerusalem. He offered a powerful incentive, a plenary indulgence, the remission of all sins for those who undertook this sacred journey. The response was electrifying. Cries of Deus vult, God wills it, echoed through the crowd. The First Crusade had begun. But this wasn't just a single, organized army. The first wave was actually a chaotic movement known as the People's Crusade, led by a charismatic preacher named Peter the Hermit. This was a ragtag group of peasants, commoners, and low-ranking knights, fired up by religious zeal, but lacking discipline, training, and supplies. Their journey was disastrous. They pillaged their way across Eastern Europe, clashing with local populations before even reaching Constantinople. Once they crossed into Anatolia, they were swiftly annihilated by the Seljuk Turks. It was a tragic and brutal start. The real military force, the Prince's Crusade, followed soon after. This was a much more organized affair, led by prominent European nobles like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto. These were seasoned commanders with professional armies. After a long and grueling march, filled with sieges, battles, and incredible hardship, they achieved what seemed impossible. In 1099, after a bloody siege, they captured the city of Jerusalem. The victory was immense, but it was also marked by a horrific massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, a dark stain that would be remembered for centuries. With Jerusalem secured, the Crusaders didn't just pack up and go home. They established 4 new states in the Middle East, known as the Crusader states: the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli. These were essentially European feudal kingdoms transplanted into a foreign land, surrounded by hostile neighbors. For the next 2 centuries, the history of this region would be a constant struggle for survival for these Latin outposts. The success of the First Crusade was a shock to the Muslim world, which was politically fragmented at the time. But it wouldn't last. The call for jihad, or holy struggle, began to unite them. In 1144, the city of Edessa, the northernmost Crusader state, was captured by the powerful Muslim ruler Imad al-Din Zengi. This loss sent shockwaves back to Europe, prompting the call for a Second Crusade. The Second Crusade was a complete disaster. Led by 2 of Europe's most powerful monarchs, King Louis VII of France and King Conrad III of Germany, it was plagued by poor planning, internal rivalries, and strategic blunders. Instead of focusing on retaking Edessa, they foolishly decided to attack the friendly city of Damascus, a move that failed spectacularly and achieved nothing except alienating a potential ally. The crusade fizzled out, a massive failure that severely damaged the prestige of the Crusader movement. But the real turning point was yet to come, and it would be defined by one of history's most iconic figures, Saladin. A brilliant military strategist and a chivalrous leader, Saladin united the Muslim forces of Egypt and Syria under his rule. His goal was clear: to drive the Crusaders out of the Holy Land. In 1187, at the Battle of Hattin, Saladin lured the main army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem into a waterless trap and utterly destroyed it. It was a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders. Shortly after, Jerusalem itself fell back into Muslim hands after nearly 90 years of Christian rule. Saladin, in stark contrast to the massacre of 1099, spared the city's inhabitants, allowing them to be ransomed or leave peacefully. The fall of Jerusalem prompted the most famous of all the Crusades, the Third Crusade, also known as the King's Crusade. It was led by three of Europe's greatest rulers: Emperor Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, King Philip II of France, and King Richard I of England, famously known as Richard the Lionheart. It began with its own tragedy. Frederick Barbarossa drowned while crossing a river in Anatolia, and much of his massive army turned back. The rivalry between Philip and Richard also soured the campaign. After capturing the key port city of Acre, Philip returned to France, leaving Richard to lead the crusade alone. What followed was a legendary duel between two military geniuses, Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. Richard won several key battles and proved himself an unmatched battlefield commander, but he was never able to recapture Jerusalem. The crusade ended in a truce. Christian pilgrims were granted safe passage to visit the holy sites, but Jerusalem remained under Saladin's control. It was a compromise, a recognition that neither side could completely defeat the other. You might think that was the end of it, but no. The Fourth Crusade, which began around 1202, is perhaps the most bizarre and cynical of them all. The original plan was to attack Egypt, the heart of Saladin's former empire. But the Crusaders didn't have enough money to pay the Venetians for ships, so the cunning Venetians made them a deal. Help us recapture the rebellious city of Zara on the Adriatic coast, and we'll transport you. Zara was a Christian city, but the Crusaders agreed. Pope Innocent III was furious and excommunicated the entire crusade. But it got worse. The Crusaders were then diverted again, this time to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the very empire the First Crusaders had set out to help. Lured by promises of wealth and a pretender to the Byzantine throne, the Crusaders ended up attacking and brutally sacking the greatest Christian city in the world in 1204. They stole priceless relics, destroyed libraries, and established a short-lived Latin empire. The Fourth Crusade never even reached the Holy Land. It was a complete betrayal of the original crusading ideal and a fatal blow to the Byzantine Empire, from which it never truly recovered. There were other crusades that followed. The Fifth Crusade was another failed attempt to conquer Egypt. The Sixth Crusade was led by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, who was actually excommunicated at the time. In a strange twist, he managed to regain Jerusalem, not through war, but through diplomacy, negotiating a 10-year truce with the Sultan of Egypt. But the victory was short-lived. We also have to mention the darker side quests of the crusading movement, like the Albigensian Crusade, a brutal 20-year war, not against Muslims in the east, but against a Christian sect deemed heretical in southern France. And then there was the tragic Children's Crusade, a popular movement where thousands of children and young people tried to march to the Holy Land, believing their innocence would succeed where armies had failed. Most died of starvation or were sold into slavery. By the late 13th century, the momentum was gone. The Muslim Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt systematically dismantled the remaining Crusader states. The final nail in the coffin came in 1291, with the fall of Acre, the last major Crusader stronghold. The age of the Crusades in the Holy Land was over. So what was the legacy of these 2 centuries of conflict? It's incredibly complex. The Crusades were, without a doubt, a story of immense violence, religious intolerance, and political greed. They caused untold suffering and left a legacy of bitterness and mistrust between the Christian and Muslim worlds that some argue still echoes today. But they also had profound and unexpected consequences. They dramatically increased contact between Western Europe and the Islamic world. European knights and nobles came back with new ideas, new technologies, and new tastes. Things like sugar, spices, apricots, and fine textiles became highly sought after. This stimulated trade, helped foster the growth of Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa, and broadened European horizons. Knowledge of science, medicine, and philosophy from the advanced Islamic world, much of it preserved from ancient Greece, began to flow back into Europe, contributing to the intellectual awakening of the Renaissance. The Crusades also changed Europe itself. They strengthened the power of monarchs who could levy taxes and raise armies for the cause. They helped codify the idea of the chivalrous knight, a warrior fighting for God and glory. And they forever intertwined religion, politics, and warfare in the European psyche. The Age of Crusades is not a simple tale of good versus evil. It's a messy, fascinating, and often tragic story about how faith, fear, ambition, and ignorance can drive human beings to incredible feats of both heroism and brutality. It's a crucial chapter in our shared global history, and understanding it helps us understand the world we live in today. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the Middle Ages. If you found this exploration of the Crusades interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. Let us know in the comments which part of the Crusades you find most fascinating. See you next time.